Hey there guys, and welcome back to Date Warp. We are back for the last part of Linds's good ending route. I just skipped forward a little bit after the end of the Never Have I Ever game. We just went past the part where Janet says that she's going to make dinner for everybody later, and now we are spending the afternoon, I think, in the library, so let us see. This looks like the beginning of another Linds scene, so let us see what we shall see. We promised Nathaniel not to disturb Linds in his work in the basement, so I couldn't go looking for him. However, I'm fairly sure he'll turn up here eventually. Who could resist all these books? So when the faint sound of a footstep behind me finally heralds his arrival, I am not surprised. Good morning. Or is it afternoon yet? I have only had 1 cup of coffee so far today, therefore it is morning. How many cups do you drink in a day? That depends on how large the cups are. I should have known better than to expect a straight answer from him. Anyway, I was waiting for you. Oh? Since you were interested in our world, I thought you might like to see what the United States looks like. I've made a sketch. It's not exactly right. I can never remember all the little bits in New England. New England is a state? No, it's a region. Mostly where the original 13 colonies were. He taps the western half of the map. These are your states as well? By the time the West became states, I suppose people were tired of so many squiggly lines and set boundaries instead of letting them develop naturally. The middle bit was the Louisiana Purchase from France, and the rest was from wars with Mexico, I think. What about here? Most of this was Nueva España, which is now El Dorado. The Mississippi River forms the western boundary for much of Atlanta, except here. He rests his fingers over the coast of Louisiana State. They conquered this area in the War of 1802 to ensure access to the point of Gendarc. They, not we? I was not there at the time. He stretches, rolling his head from side to side. While comparative history is an interesting subject, its practical value is limited. Actually, I'm taking cultural anthropology. Being able to write up an alternate history setting might be worth extra credit. Like you're actually thinking that you might get back to get that extra credit. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, who knows? I don't know where this ending is going. And that's even true, which makes it a perfect cover story. I needed an excuse to talk to Linds so that I could try to work up my courage to go further. Wait, this is the western border? So if I cross the river, I'll be in another country? That is usually how it works. Do you get immigrants trying to swim across the river? Oh, too real right now. There's too many bad things happening to immigrants at the moment. Please don't bring that up. If you consider the Mississippi a practical swim, fitness levels in your world must be impressive. Well, I certainly wouldn't. I don't know how swimmable it is. There's not really much point, so I've never heard of anyone trying. If I wanted to get to Arkansas, I'd just take the M Bridge. It's not a real border. You wouldn't even know you'd changed states without the road sign. Our border with El Dorado is not completely open, but citizens of either side cross freely with identification. What's it like on the other side? If you want to know more, you might ask Raphael. He grew up there. That's right, he said that his family... Wait, I thought Raphael said that you and he both moved here from the West. I was working there at the time. You're allowed to do that as an Atlantan citizen? If your skills are valuable enough. And I suppose they must be if his story is true. My classmates would scoff that he has too high an opinion of himself, but there's nothing wrong with being clever and knowing that you are. I'd like to see both countries if possible and find out how different they are from my home. I'd find myself more fascinated by the similarities than the differences. In a multiverse of infinite possibilities, how likely is it that you would travel from one Earth to another of the same physical geography? The same native peoples here, the same major powers in Europe, the same dialect shifts? Well, if the possibilities are infinite, then anything is just as likely as anything else, right? And probability is meaningless once the event has already occurred. We would need to travel to many different universes before we could establish any sort of pattern. I'm sure with your help we'd be able to find a way. Flattery will get you everywhere, my dear. Well, that was the idea. Really? I have to hide my face from his gaze. I'm no good at flirting, even with such an easy target. Guys often find blushing girls cute, right? Maybe he'll pick up on my signals? Make this easier for me? This is weirdly cute, even considering how, like, kind of creepy that Linds is sometimes. Ah! What a coward I am. The whole point of this is to learn. How am I gonna cope with a real romance if I don't have any practice? Should I throw myself at him and see what happens? I said I was gonna flatter him, so I don't know. What should Janet talk about in order to stroke Linds' ego? Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Ah. That's interesting. I'm just looking at the guide now, and in both the good ending and the bad ending, they recommend choosing his appearance to flatter him with. I wonder what kind of ending you would get with his intellect then. So we should probably save here just so we can see. Let's do the one we're supposed to first in that case. Okay. So let's go for his appearance then. There we go. You're very attractive, you know? Elaborate. Well, I like boys with glasses. It looks dignified. And your hair? Some boy geeks have long hair, but it's often greased or tangled. Yours looks like silk. Would you like to touch it? What? My hair. Okay. I'm not sure what to do. I've braided other girls' hair, but I've never touched it just to touch it. And he's a boy. Man, I don't even know how old he is. Now this is starting to sound like the start of a porno or something. Oh, hesitantly I place my hand on top of his head and run my palm down his hair. It's soft. The hairs are finer than mine. It must be a lot of work to keep it so smooth and glossy. Is this a request to borrow my conditioner? If you brought some, then yes. I certainly didn't take any with me out to dinner. I could help you wash. Is he serious? Unbidden, the image of Linds wet and naked in the shower sneaks into my mind. Don't you think that's moving a bit fast? Oh, I don't know. How would you like me to move? I'm not sure. Suddenly, I hear a faint beeping noise. I can't immediately see the source, but Linds reacts immediately. I must get back to my work. Perhaps we can continue this discussion later this evening. All right. Janet, jeez, girl. Way to go. You gonna get some booty sometime this evening, girl. Assuming crazy stuff doesn't happen. I just want to high-five Janet right now. Girl! Get you some man in the sack with you. Man, have some confidence. Ah. Okay, so they're gonna have dinner. Okay. Okay, so the boys come in, filter in to have dinner. Linds tilts his head curiously, drawing in a long, slow breath of air through his nose and holding it for a few moments before exhaling. All right. That line in the context of the previous scene changes the mood quite a bit. He doesn't say anything more. Thank you very much for preparing all of this for us. Wait until you eat it before you say that. Okay, does anything else change with the reactions? Probably not. Okay, so finish the dinner scene. What happens afterwards? After dinner, I wander the halls feeling restless. I know Linds said he wanted to talk to me again later, but I'm not quite sure where he is or when it's safe to intrude. Well, this house isn't that big. I'm sure he'll turn up again when he chooses. Ah, my wish is granted. Linds is standing by the front door's force field with a variety of equipment. Is everything all right? For the moment, I am simply taking some readings. Without taking his eyes off his gadgets, he reaches over a plate on the side table and picks up the last remnant of a sandwich, then stuffs it in his mouth. You didn't like my cooking, did you? Oh, yes, dinner. I didn't dislike it. You just decided not to eat it? Strong, complex, and unfamiliar flavors tend to not sit well with me. I had a bit. And then you snuck back to make a sandwich. Actually, Raphael made the sandwich. So Raphael still ended up having to do work for other people. What is it with you two anyway? You said he's not your partner, but you treat him like your slave. I most certainly do not. He sets his equipment aside and turns to face me. I have never forced Raphael to do anything. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply. I allow him to live with me if he wants. He chooses to make himself useful. So he's paying his rent and chores? But why is Raphael living with Linds in the first place? I can't help being curious, but my last question obviously pressed a button, and that is not the mood I'm trying to get Linds into. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to accuse you of anything, I was only teasing. You apologizing for teasing me? How unusual. Does that mean that you wish to apply for the position of slave? That's probably not what we were going for. What positions do you prefer then? Ruler of the universe sounds like a nice one. That's a good comeback, Janet. Nice one. He chuckles. But you'd have to best me for that. Is that a challenge? I like how I'm kind of like, their voices are kind of getting closer in my register the closer they get. He reaches out and brushes the back of his fingers against my cheek. I do believe you were challenging me, which makes it my choice of terms for our duel. What do you have in mind? He's touching me! Ah! Slender fingers, smooth and strong, cup my chin and tilt it upwards. My lips tremble in anticipation. Perhaps a game? What sort of game? His fingertips trail away, leaving me feeling flushed and off balance. Video games. I brought my Magnavix with me. Fucking nerd. Jesus. Don't do that. You know exactly what you're doing with her, you goddamn. Oh, video games. Okay. I'm not an expert gamer or anything, but I've played a few, mostly RPGs. Well then, come up to my room. I'll show you my Pokeymanz. Your bedroom? Where else do I keep an electronic games console? Alright then. He's inviting me to his room? I haven't even managed to get a kiss from him yet. What would he do if I suddenly stood on my toes and planted one on him? But I wouldn't dare. I don't know how. I'd probably bump his nose or bite his lip or something. I hate fumbling through new tasks without proper instructions. Oh, poor naive Janet. I wish he would. Follow me. Linds leads me to a very tidy bedroom. Not as plain as the one I'm staying in, but it doesn't look lived in either. Very impersonal, which is a relief, but... This is your room? This is the room that I am staying in temporarily. I believe it was originally intended for a housekeeper. There's nothing here but a bed and a television with extras. Why would you bring video games with you if you were just going to someone's house to fix the electrical system? It's too nice a job to rush. Whatever he's up to, he was planning to be here for several days. You're doing some kind of experiment down there, aren't you? It will require more than that to interrogate me. If I beat you, will you tell me? Maybe. You're as bad as a little boy. Well, I did bring you here to play video games, didn't I? Right. Well, show me what you've got, kid. Gladly. He waits, apparently expecting some reaction. Well, the games? Oh. He turns and fiddles around under the television set, hooking up some things and plugging them in. I wonder what kind of games he's got. I hope it's not all first-person shooters. I'm terrible at those. Loading screen. Oh no! 8-bit! You bit what? The game's retro thing. I forgot that I was in the past. Video games have changed a great deal then. Well, you still see oldies like that sometimes, but they're usually free or in compilations or cheap downloads. The home console games are usually 3D. Wow, you probably don't even have handhelds yet. Portable games do exist, but in a primitive state. Yes, even by our standards. This is getting very, very meta all of a sudden. I'm feeling very aware of playing a video game all of a sudden. You know, I may not be able to tell you how to build a 64-bit console from scratch, but I can tell you about 25 years of game and interface design. That has certain possibilities. Of course, you are so advanced, your victory threshold should be higher than mine. No fair, I don't play retro games. Let's just see what happens. We sit on the floor in front of the bed and pick up the game controllers. The screen fills with tiny, low-color spaceships and monsters which explode in a shower of white pixels when shot. Unsurprisingly, he's better at this than I am. How did you beat that boss so quickly? それは秘密です. Linds is a very Zelos type character. If anybody remembers Slayers, high five to you, by the way. That was not a good show, but it was a memorable show. You've already won, so what difference does it make? Just tell me. Why do you want to know? I don't like not knowing things. Ah. The secret is to shoot the missile before it can launch so that it blows up inside the boss. Sneaky. It takes a deft touch to find a secret sensitive spot. He puts an arm around me, leaning so close I can feel his breath on my ear. Oh! And you, Janet? What sensitive places might I find hidden here? They wouldn't be hidden if I told you. Oh, so you'd like me to find out. His nose brushes against my neck, sending a shiver down my spine. If I weren't already sitting, I think I'd fall. That's one. Are you ticklish, Janet? Yes. No, I mean, don't! Don't be afraid. I needed to know as a warning. After all, I intend for my touch to be pleasurable. I can feel his arms around me. The warmth of him through my clothes feels nice and scary at the same time. This would be a much more sensual scene if the CG drawing were a little less stiff. His palm slides down my arm to rest over my hand. Would you like to spend the night with me tonight? With no strings attached? So there it is. The offer's plain on the table. An opportunity to be initiated by an experienced older man. He's cute and I like him, and I thought this would be a good chance to practice flirting and maybe kissing, but to go that far, just for one night, no strings, no consequences, is that really what I want? Should Janet accept Linds's offer? Whoa. Okay, wow. I read this question in the spoiler-free walkthrough, and I was not sure what this offer would be. Now knowing what it is, ha! Well, obviously this is a save point. There we go. Oh, we didn't go back and see what his intellect does. I guess we'll do that later after we finish the full route. But in the case of the good ending, trying to get the good ending first, we are definitely going to say no first. Because if we want like a full-on romance with Linds, we probably don't want to rush into it in like a no-strings-attached kind of way. Because that implies casual, and we don't want casual, we want full romance, so no. We don't want to do that. No. Okay. I can't. I thought I wanted to fool around, but it's all right. You don't have to apologize. He withdraws and stands up. You should never feel guilty for saying no. And that's good. I kind of expected that would be the response from Linds in this case, because he does seem like a responsible, sex-positive person, even if he does like to joke a little bit beyond good taste sometimes. You don't understand. I was flirting with you. I came up here thinking about that. I thought we could do whatever and it wouldn't have to mean anything. But I don't think that's what I really want. I think I might like you, and I want you to like me, for more than just fooling around. We don't know each other well enough yet, but maybe that might change. Ah, well, in that case, I will bid you good night. For now. He takes my hand and brings it to his lips. I won't make you any promises, but perhaps we can talk further on this subject another day. He's like weirdly super respectful, despite like how he's been in the rest of the game. That's nice. Thank you, Linds, for that. Okay, so we're having the dream where you're being pushed towards the light, which is honestly kind of a really creepy dream. But we know why this dream is happening because of the physical world at this point. Okay. Oh, wait. No, we don't. Wait, hang on. I thought this was the dream that happened right before the walls started pushing in. But I guess it's not. It's right before the explosion. Okay. Something feels wrong. It's too quiet. Explosion? I run down the hall to Linds' room and rap on his door. I have to resist the urge to bang. I don't want to wake the whole mansion up. After a few moments, the door opens. Janet! Jeez, what a scrawny boy. Or man, or whatever, how old he is. Did you change your mind? No, but the sight of him wearing nothing more than a loosely tied bedsheet is rather distracting. I heard a noise, like a muffled explosion, somewhere in the house, possibly down in your lab. I think something's wrong. I'd better go and see. I'm coming with you. You'd be in the... I won't touch anything without permission. You might need help. Do you really have time to argue with me? Fine, come on. Well, this should be interesting. We had to stay up here last time. We hurry down the stairs together. I'm on the lookout for signs of trouble, but I don't see anything. No smoke, no fire. Still, something feels off. It's too quiet. The refrigerator should be humming, but it's not. Is the power out? If the power overload happened ahead of schedule, then the force fields could be already down. But what is Linds up to in the basement? It's a medical laboratory? There are computers and equipment, some that I recognize, some that I don't. Okay, so we get to find out about Bianca this way then. And one patient surrounded by tubes and wires, unmoving. Linds hurries over to one of the computers and begins inputting commands. I stand back out of the way, staring. That woman on the table looks vaguely familiar, but I'm not sure what she reminds me of. She must have been down here all this time. I like that line in that, like, she probably looks familiar because she looks like Albin, but you could also read that line as maybe being familiar because we've already been through this timeline, through the timeline once before, just with a different guy. So I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I think you could read it that way. Could Bradley have been right from the beginning? Has Linds been kidnapping women, holding them prisoner, performing experiments on them? Oh, don't you start with your assumptions again. No, that's silly. If that were... Yeah, there you go. You be smart about this. This is the smart route. No, that's silly. If that were the case, Linds would never have brought me down here. Unless he was planning to chloroform me. I take a step backwards towards the exit. He doesn't even seem to notice. It was only paranoia. Nothing to worry about. Too much load upstairs. I need to disconnect a few things and reset the breakers. Wait a minute. If the power's off upstairs, shouldn't that mean the force field is down and we can get back in touch with the outside world? Not necessarily. What do you mean? I'm still seeing anomalies in the overall power structure. The backup generators never went offline. If his intent was to overload the mansion's entire power system in order to shut it down and destroy the force fields, it shouldn't be possible for only part of the system to burn out. Most likely, he never intended to overload the power down here, which I suppose makes sense, considering... She's your experiment, isn't she? If that woman is on some kind of life support, it would be crucial that her power supply not be interrupted. Who is she? What are you doing to her? Attempting to restore her to life. Huh? Her name is Bianca Dean. She's Albin's sister and Nathaniel's fiancée. Last month, she suffered a cerebral vascular accident. I believe that means bleeding inside the brain. That's very bad because it tries to swell up and the skull gets in the way. Surgery repaired as much damage as possible, but she remained comatose with a steadily worsening prognosis. The flesh remained, but the spirit had departed. Her body was an empty shell, threatening to crack. People do wake up from comas sometimes. However, the majority of patients either recover or die within weeks. Which is why they found me. They needed a miracle. We should go back upstairs. I need to unplug things and reset the breakers before anyone else wakes up. We should go back upstairs. I need to unplug things and reset the breakers before anyone else wakes up. I follow along behind him, my mind whirling. You're not a chemist at all. On the contrary, I'm quite fond of chemistry. How else would I go about creating pharmaceuticals? We return to the main lobby where, as Linds had suggested, the force field is still in evidence. Why the force fields, then? What does that have to do with Bianca? I am not entirely certain how they came about. There does seem to be some sort of feedback problem leaking into the electrical system. It was not intentional. Wouldn't it be safer to switch to manual life support long enough to debug the system? If your technique is causing feedback surges, it is more complicated than you imagine. A significantly higher energy difference is needed to get over the reconnection threshold than would be required to simply maintain an existing connection. By simultaneously increasing the energy of her spirit and applying an oppositional charge to her body, the threshold can be surpassed. But if the containment gradient were disabled at this point, the accumulated energy would release her spirit at a high imaginary velocity, which would displace it from our frame of reference sufficiently that it would be impossible to locate it again. That sounds completely impossible to me. That's why it calls for a miracle worker. Can Linds really do something like that? Maybe in his world he can. As it seems that I do not need your help, you should probably get some sleep. I'll update everyone on the situation in the morning. This episode's probably going to go long, but I kind of want to finish this route off in this part, so stick with me for this.